Welcome into the Russ Joy Show, the NHL Trade Deadline Special. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Season's greetings. And I can now once again very confidently say, the Danny Briere. Oh, we are here, friends. We are here. I said 2 months ago, the Flyers had to get rid of 2 to 3 roster players for this rebuild to actually amount to what is being promised. They sent Frost, they sent Farabee, they brought back Kuzmenko and Peltier. Now Kuzmenko is gone for a 3rd-round pick. Think of beauty. But that wasn't all, was it? No. We've known for a good long while a lot of teams were interested in one Scott Laughton. We knew deep down in our bones that Scott Laughton had to be traded. Had to be, right? You couldn't possibly go into another offseason with Scott Laughton on the roster, right? And it happened. 2 hours before the trade deadline officially hit, Scott Laughton traded to Toronto. Now, that is not shocking. What is shocking, especially if you're being honest about the player, lovely person. Very good locker room guy. Bottom 6 forward. Danny Briere somehow turned Scott Laughton into a first-round draft pick. Now, it is a 2027 first-round draft pick. You can do that when you're still very early in your tenure, as opposed to somebody who's been kind of, flailing in the wind for 5 or 6 years and might have no real job security beyond this year. So Danny goes out. 2027 first-round pick. It's being reported as top 10 protected. Even if things were to go sideways for Toronto, hard to imagine it's going to fall out of the top, or it's going to fall in the top 10. So it's a very big moment for the Flyers. A hell of a return. But it's not just getting rid of Scott Laughton that does it. It's that you also got an absolute beaut of a human being back. And at this point, unless you've been, I think, unplugged from everything going on in the world, you have probably seen this clip going around. But this was earlier this season. The young prospect that they got back, they didn't get Fraser Minten. We had talked about Fraser Minten on Snow the Goalie. Not the guy that they got. They got Nikita Grebenkin, who is apparently, and I was watching TSN today, is apparently very good friends with Matvei Michkov, which we love. We love that, don't we? The idea that Michkov has a friend on the team. That's a very good thing. I want you to hear about what Nikita Grebenkin had to say earlier this year. There are 3 kinds of checks that he's excited about in the National Hockey League. 3 kinds of checks. Going to give you a second to think about it, and Voracek is not one of those 3. All right, fine. Let's go over to Nikita Grebenkin, and what are the 3 checks that you like so much there, fella?
Team speak me back check, forecheck, and paycheck.
Back check, forecheck, paycheck. Oh, we like this guy. I think he's going to do just fine in Philadelphia. And over on TSN, when they were talking about Grebenkin, they said not only is he good friends with Michkov, but he's got a hell of a personality, which could be a great thing, right? It could be a great thing. Will he drive towards nuts? I don't know. He's got, I believe, 21 points. I want to say 21 points in 39 games in the AHL this year. 21 years old. A lot of upside. Viewed by a lot of pundits as somebody who has legitimate upside. Could maybe be a second-line player for you. And when you combine that with this 2017 first-round pick, in exchange for a guy who, in fairness, is a bottom 6 forward, it's a hell of a get. So on the day, the Flyers retain salary. And I saw people getting upset on Twitter because people, I think, are just so used to being upset that they can't see the forest for the trees. But there are people who are legitimately upset that, they're retaining salary on Andrei Kuzmenko. They're retaining salary on Scott Laughton. Now all the retention spots are used up, and that could be a very bad thing for this team going forward. That could be a problem. No. You take the draft capital you can get. You take getting a good, maybe even great, but certainly a good prospect back in this deal. And overall, if you look at the haul that they got for Frost and that they got for Farabee, and ultimately if you subscribe to the same methodology that I do and the same belief in how this team needs to get better, it's always been lower the ceiling, lower the floor. And as soon as they traded Frost and Farabee, what's the thing that we talked about on this show, as well as on Snow the Goalie? You're getting rid of playmaking ability in Frost. You're getting rid of potential goal scoring in Farabee. Ended up working at the Kuzmenko came here and looked pretty damn good. Got you some goals. Started getting some people excited. And I joked that he was almost like the karmic payoff for Zherdev from back in the day because I liked Zherdev and I felt like he never got a fair shake. But now Kuzmenko gets dealt and you get a third-round pick back for him. For a guy that, like, you very clearly had no interest in bringing back. Now, I saw somebody theorize, they can trade Kuzmenko away now, and then they can bring him back in the offseason, and then you have a third-round pick and Kuzmenko. I don't think Kuzmenko is coming back. And in fairness, they send him out to the Kings. They thank him for his service, his very limited run in Philadelphia. But, like, realistically, you just got a third-round pick back. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to find a legitimate player in the third round that's going to end up amounting to anything. But it's certainly more than you were going to get out of Kuzmenko, especially if you, as an organization, decided, we don't want to bring this guy back. There could be a myriad of reasons why you might not have wanted to bring Kuzmenko back. Is there something about his work ethic? Was there something away from the ice? Was there something about his on-ice productivity? Was there something that they flagged within the front office or the coaching staff? Whatever. They got to see what this guy was about, and they ultimately decided, we're good. We're fine. Don't need to bring him back in the offseason. Don't need to extend him. Third-round pick. Now, we get to Scott Laughton, and the Laughton part of this is what is the most intriguing, and it's the thing that this morning on this show, it's the second show that we're doing today. On the show this morning, I noted the fact that I knew that there were going to be some people who were going to be really upset if the Flyers didn't ultimately trade Scott Laughton, and the thing that I was pretty resolute in the belief was, you don't trade him just for a second-round pick for funsies. Scott Laughton should have gotten you back just based on what the rest of the market was. He should have brought you back a first-round pick. And guess what? He did. And so we're going to give Danny Briere a lot of credit here and a lot of earned credit. Because, we just got breaking news. Let me make sure that this isn't a fake account. This is breaking news. This is not about the Flyers. Brad Marchand has now been traded to the Panthers. Brad Marchand traded from Boston to Florida. I'll bring this up on the screen really quick. This is pretty wild. Brad Marchand goes from Boston to Florida. So, boy, oh boy, that got heated. I mean, the Golden Knights went and put out a tweet that it was just high, and so everybody started losing their shit that Vegas is doing something crazy. Now, in fairness, I haven't been looking at at Twitter. I just pulled that one up. Marchand to the Panthers is certainly something. Wow. Absolutely wild move. That's the kind of move that I don't think any of us saw coming. I think that we all kind of accepted the fact that there was the possibility that he would end up being dealt away from Boston, but I didn't have Florida on that radar. That's not what I expected to see. Apparently, there are further potential trades that could be in the queue, and that's the beauty of doing the show right around 3 o'clock is that now we're going to get to see any of the late arriving trades, but that is an absolutely massive deal for a team that very much believes it's going to be in the mix for a Stanley Cup. So Toronto makes the move for Laughton. They don't end up getting a higher caliber center. We actually, if you're a Flyers fan, you should probably offer Brayden Schenn a beverage or food or a snack or something because the rumor came out that Toronto is actually interested in getting Brayden Schenn, but Schenn wouldn't waive his no trade clause, and so that forced Toronto to come back to the table with the Flyers, hence the first round pick and Grebenkin. So boy, oh boy, that is interesting. I'm going to keep an eye over on Twitter in the meantime just to see if we have any other trades coming through, but that is absolutely wild. I'm wondering if it was just a troll job by the Golden Knights because they put out the high and then people started freaking out. Man, oh man, oh man. What a day in the National Hockey League. What a day around this trade deadline. Talk about teams looking totally different. Mikko Rantanen ends up signing with Dallas this morning. We were having the conversation about whether or not that was going to fall through, that he was apparently looking for around $14 million. I think the last thing I saw is 8-year extension, $12 million AAV. Seems like a really good deal for the player. In exchange, Dallas sends Stankoven and 2 first-round picks and 2 third-round picks to Carolina, which is a good haul for them. And, like, again, you're getting multiple firsts back, but when you take it on aggregate and you look at what you initially traded away to bring Rantanen in and then you bailed on it, there are going to be a lot, and I mean a lot, of pundits who are going to take a very good, hard look at Carolina after this deadline. Now, I did see, and I think this was a joke. Where did I see it? Over in the comments. I saw somebody joking about Crosby being traded to Vegas. I did not see that. I know that there are people who are upset that Rasmus Ristolainen remains on this team. If you've been listening to anything I've had to say for the last few months, I've been pretty adamant that they were not going to trade Rasmus Ristolainen unless they got their doors blown off. And getting their doors blown off would include a first-round pick, probably a roster player, probably a prospect. Darren Drager went out this morning and put that out to the world and said that Laughton would require a haul. I would say that the Flyers, all things considered, getting back a young player and a first-round pick, that to me is a haul for a bottom 6 forward. Risto being here does not mean that Risto is going to be here long-term. It is entirely possible that at the draft, somebody comes up to you, they make you an offer you can't refuse. Possible that this time next year, Risto is a right-handed defenseman who, if he continues to play at a high level, will certainly garner attention next year. But they have so many small defensemen on this team that it seemed almost inconceivable they'd move on from Risto unless they had another guy lined up. Now, I did note in the episode description, and I think I tweeted about it as well, Wyatt Johnston has signed an extension with Dallas, so the RFA dream of going after Wyatt Johnston has now died. But I can still kind of feel a little bit positive about where the Flyers decided to go today. Let's go out to the comments, though, because I want to see how happy or sad we're feeling out there. I think that the trading of Laughton is, at the bare minimum, what people expected to have happen. If you were expecting, 6 different trades, you were going to be disappointed no matter what. Let's see. Greg Bondarenko over on YouTube says, good afternoon, all. Chris Freed, Danny actually made some trades today. That is CNN breaking news. Amadeo, video guy Amadeo, had to do some editing for the show this morning. We'll probably have to do more now. Says, oh, my aching tentacles. That's not a good Squidward, but I do a good Mr. Krabs and a good SpongeBob and a good Patrick. But we're just, oh yeah. Nick Bott says, Danny did very well. Greg Bondarenko's happy with the return that Danny got. Let's see. Jim Cochran says, happy. Last time we have to talk about a Scott Laughton trade pod for all those that celebrate. March 25th, Flyers go to Toronto, so get excited about that. Chris Freed says, for a guy to play 661 games and only have 265 points to show for it, getting a first-round pick back is outstanding. I think that's totally fair. Landros, too, says, okay returns. Still wanted another 1 or 2, but I think that was a better day by Briere than I thought. I don't know what you were expecting. Risto wasn't going to get dealt. I think if Cam York is going to get traded, it's going to be in the offseason. By the way, the tweet that I put out yesterday with the percentages that we looked at this morning, they proved to be correct, right? I said high probability that Laughton gets dealt, better than 50% chance Kuzmenko gets dealt, and then I had Risto and York both under 50%. That's where it ended up going. That was not surprising to me. Ryan Reese says, would have liked to see Risto traded as well, but still a good deadline. It was. This is a success. And when you consider this with the Frost and Farabee deal, that's it. Oh, we have a Flyers trade. Woo, 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 woo. Holy shit. Hold on a second. Guys, lower the ceiling, lower the floor. We have quite the trade for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers. Colorado bringing back Erik Johnson. There you go. Erik Johnson, we hardly knew ye. Just when you thought the Flyers were done, they trade Erik Johnson. Friends, Romans, countrymen, I don't know what the return is going to be, but as long as it's not a bag of pucks, well, we're going to be happy with that return. So Erik Johnson also traded. Again, that's the beauty of doing the show starting at 3 o'clock, is we're going to get some of these late straggling calls and these late straggling trades. So, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now, does that mean that we're going to see a bigger deal? No. Now, I saw Anthony DeMarco put out nothing yet on Igor Zamula, and then people started going, what does yet mean? And I can give you a little bit of context, I think. Toronto has been circling on Risto for a long time. The Flyers, I don't think, believed that even if, I don't know for a fact that Toronto wanted to go down the Cam York route, but I think that the Flyers looked at what Toronto had available to trade back. And it's like, all right, if the Flyers had to add a sweetener to the pot to get back Grebenkin and get back this first-round pick, could they have looked to have moved an Igor Zamula as part of that deal? Maybe. Does Zamula really have a lot of value to a team? Probably not. Not a ton. There are always teams that are willing to take a look at guys that have proven to be NHL-adjacent talent defensemen, and you think about the possibility that you get them in your system and maybe you can make more of them than their current team has. But I wouldn't have been surprised, I guess, to see Zamula added to a deal today. But he remains in town. But there you go. You've got Erik Johnson gone. You want to talk about lowers the ceiling, lower the floor. Erik Johnson. Let's see. Sean C. says, given how long it took Peltier and Kuzmenko to finally play for the Flyers, I imagine Grebenkin won't be able to play a game for the Phantoms or Flyers until next November. I have no idea what they're going to do there. I have no clue at all. I have not talked to anybody from the organization yet. I don't know what the plan there is. I'm sure that Briere, when he addresses the media, will get into that. I'm assuming somebody's going to ask it. But Reed DeFord says, tank, baby, tank. I mean, listen. Laughton, I said this morning, doesn't really lower the ceiling and lower the floor in as big of a way as the Walker trade and the Sealer injury last year did to that team after the deadline, or at and after the deadline. But I do think that this is going to make the Flyers a worse team. I think that the Kuzmenko part of it is also kind of big, especially because he's looked at least somewhat dynamic and has been able to pot you some goals. Carl Bradley over on YouTube says, would have liked a little more activity, but fine keeping Risto and love the return for Lots. Yeah. Josh White checks in all caps, lower the ceiling, lower the floor. Or lower the floor, lower the ceiling. Amadeus says the same thing. Eric Brown says, is a third for Kuzmenko a good thing? I don't get it. I don't know what there isn't to get. If you're not going to bring a guy back, right, and the Flyers presumably now, we're not going to bring Kuzmenko back, yeah, you take a draft pick every time. Why wouldn't you? I'd rather have a lottery ticket than have nothing. If the Flyers had let Kuzmenko stay here and then leave in the offseason, there's nothing to show for it. You not only lose one of your potentially better goal scorers now in Kuzmenko, but you've also brought back a draft pick that could be used. Either you could use it in a draft, or you could parlay it with other picks or other assets to make a move somewhere else. Flyers Purgatory says, not clearing a spot for Andre to play is ridiculous. I think that next year will be Andre's year, is my guess. I think we're going to see more changes on the blue line this offseason. Josh White says, would have liked Risto or Zamula gone. Yeah. Let's see. Bob Wright says, earliest I see them trading Risto now is post July 1st when they'll get a retention slot back with Kuzmenko off the books. That is correct. That is likely, although there was a belief out there that the Flyers weren't going to have to retain salary to move Risto. Like, here's the thing that we don't know. Was Danny Briere offered a first-round pick for Risto? My assumption here is no. Because if they had been, I think there's a pretty decent chance that he would have gotten moved. Now, apparently, Toronto just traded Fraser Minton for Brandon Carlo, or as part of the Brandon Carlo trade. This is crazy. There are so many things going around right now on X. Oh, boy. My old pal, my pal and co-host over on Snow the Goalie, Anthony Sanfilippo, just put out, well, that Erik Johnson trade came out of nowhere. I was told the Flyers were done. Others you may follow on here as well. I wonder how last minute that deal was. Presumably, it was as close to last minute as it could be. I said a little bit ago that there was the belief that there were a bunch of calls into the league and there was a bit of a queue. But wild. That is absolutely crazy. Let's see. Eric Brown says Luke Schenn gets a second and a fourth, and Kuz only gets you a third. Luke Schenn's a defenseman. Kuzmenko is at best a depth forward. Luke Schenn's not a great defenseman, but what did you think what did you honestly think you were going to get back for a guy who has a month, 2 months left on his contract. Nobody's giving you a second for that. I thought that they would honestly try to get a fourth or a fifth. So getting a third is a hell of a get, in my opinion. Maybe I'm crazy. Josh White says, how does Beauvillier get a second and Kuzmenko get a third? Not a bad return, but come on. I can't imagine getting upset about the return for Kuzmenko. Maybe I'm crazy. Let's see. JMJR13 says, Danny has done exactly what we needed to do. He's freeing up cap, loading up on draft capital. Can't complain. This is about as perfect of a rebuilding trade deadline as you could have hoped for. If you're a total tear it down to the studs person, I hate to tell you, this team wasn't going to do that. So again, if you thought Risto was going to get moved and Cam York was going to get moved today, no shot. If you were holding out hope that some playoff contender was going to, give you something back for Sean Couturier and you're going to retain 50% of the salary, no, that wasn't going to happen. There were people this morning saying, oh, Flyers have to trade TK now. Never a better time to trade Travis Konechny. That wasn't going to happen today. No shot. Let's see. And by the way, I think that there are going to be plenty of moves this offseason. Truthfully, I think that we're going to see more. Let's see. Nick Bot says, if you complain about Kuzmenko trade, your mom's a hoe. I didn't say that. Nick Bot did. Jim Cochran says, based on what we know about the 2027 draft talent at this point, will there be a quality or ready to make the team talent outside the top 10? Nobody knows what 2027 is going to be. I mean, hell, I don't even know how many people know what's going to happen in the 2026 draft. Remember, a year ago, scouts were convinced that the 2025 draft was going to be one of the deepest and have a ton of guys at the top that could be potential franchise cornerstones, and that didn't come to fruition, right? Now it's considered a 3-player draft with maybe the 4th player being a step down and then 5 through 18 being the same quality player. Here's the one thing that we all kind of know about hockey. So much of it is hit or miss. So much of what the pundits and the scouts believe, it changes. It changes on a weekly basis, right? So you got that. Nico says, don't forget to like the video to support the Rustache. I appreciate that. The Rustache is coming in nice and strong. Apparently Shea Weber got traded to the Blackhawks. Okay. What the hell? What is happening? To which Sean C. says, Paul Holmgren's Shea Weber contract got traded. That is brutal. Did we get a play? Okay, so apparently DeMarco's saying there may be a player coming back for Eric Johnson. What the hell kind of player are you getting back for Eric Johnson? That's insane. There's no, stop. No way. That'd be insane. Allison asks, did we get anything for, I think that was supposed to be Eric Johnson, or is this a freebie? I have no idea. I think just sending him out is okay. They're saying Giovanni Smith coming back from Colorado. Okay. I don't know what that means, but okay. That's fine. Jim asks, do you think Danny packages that 2027 pick to move up in the draft next year? I'm impatient. Oh, if we're talking about moving up in the 2026 draft by dangling a 2027, maybe. Here's the thing, though. This is what I said at the very beginning of the show, right? About the pick being 2027 instead of 2026. This is the beauty of being a GM that has the full support of ownership. If this were still Chuck Fletcher in year 5 or year 6 or whatever of his tenure, you're not making a trade today to try to get a pick that won't convey for 2 more years. But because Danny has the full support of the team and the organization, he can pretty freely say, yeah, punt it to 2027. He could theoretically, if he really wanted to, Briere could, I don't know why he would, Briere could use that 2027 first-round pick. He could try to use their own 2026 first-round pick next year. Could use a couple of the picks this year to try to move up. Does that get you from number 7 and number 4 if you really believe in the 4th player in this draft? I don't know. No clue. But that's the beauty of having the assets at your disposal. That's the beauty of having the draft capital, is that you can get creative. That's it. Maybe I'm crazy. I mean, sometimes I'm nuts. But in this case, I think the Flyers have done a good job. I was ready to lose my shit about a month ago because it felt like there was no chance this Flyers team was going to do anything of real value. They have proven me wrong. The Frost and Farabee trade was a thing of beauty. Getting a first-round pick back for Laughton is a thing of beauty. I have no idea what to expect from Grebenkin, but you know what I do know? Between him and that pick, it's probably got higher upside than whatever Scott Laughton was going to give you. And by the way, I think that we're in a I would be willing to bet that because of the glue guy that Laughton was in that locker room, this absence is going to be felt. Tortorella had a wild quote earlier today to the assembled media saying that Laughton is his friend and that he told him that no matter what happens, they're still going to be friends. That relationship is still going to remain. You think about how Torts is viewed, right? You think about the brashness that Torts, puts on. Is it a front? Does he actually care? All that. There very clearly was a connection between the player and the coach. And so now moving on from him, might not be popular with the coach, might not be popular with everybody in that locker room, but the value they got back for him is fantastic. Let me see. Carl Bradley says, in almost all sports, collecting future ones helps long-term, even after you become a contender. You then have a pipeline of cheap young guys when paying your studs. Steven says, Russ Joy has been traded from Snow the Goalie to 97.5 the Fanatic. Nope. Negative. No thanks. Let's see. Nick Bott says it's the last thing we need, Steven. Yeah, we don't need that. No thanks. No gracias. Let's see. I think that was all that has come across so far. Josh White asks, thoughts on Kolosov being sent down? I have a lot of thoughts about Kolosov. I think that at some point, I'm not positive here. I think at some point we are going to circle back around on Kolosov. I don't think that Kolosov is a bad guy. And there has been nobody from the team that has indicated that he is an asshole or a horrible human being. So there's part of me that thinks that something else has been at play with Kolosov. And that's it. He does not have the ability to demand remaining on the NHL roster. On this show, it was brought up and discussed and then clarified that in theory, if they were to send him down, he, as any other player he could refuse to go, but then he stops getting paid. So it looks like he's going to be down with the Phantoms for 2-3 weeks. Gives him an opportunity with the Phantoms, I believe, still in the mix to make the playoffs in the AHL. Gives him the chance to play every night, play potentially meaningful minutes, and sure, it's not playing in the NHL, but getting playoff reps, even though they're at the AHL level, could be important for him. I just think that long term, it's a good thing for him to go down for a few weeks. Fedotov has looked really good in relief of Ersson. Ersson kind of looks like a mess. I would not be surprised if this offseason the Flyers start to explore the goalie market, at least short term. I think that they view Bjornsson and maybe Zavragan as being potential long-term pieces. I don't think they view Fedotov as a long-term guy, just based on age. Probably doesn't make a ton of sense. Could Fedotov be moved this offseason? Maybe. I don't think that they view Kolosov as a legitimate number one goalie, so that probably is off the table. Ersson is a concern. His play since the Four Nations has legitimately been troubling. We'll see if it gets better, but man, the argument of him being a potential number one, I'm not saying that it's dead or over, but it ain't looking great. But again, that could always change. Let's see. Amy said, I didn't think Torts had it in him to praise anyone but a dog. Well, he praised Laughton, so there you go. Greg Bondarenko asks, with the trades, is anyone coming up from the Phantoms? I don't know, but I would assume that does a Lixell come up? Maybe. Tony Louis says, I'm loving how Briere is moving these guys out, and we're actually seeing some serious turnover and shakeup. 2 months ago, I was seriously questioning Briere's long-term plan, but my faith is restored. That's kind of how I feel. Again, Frost, Laughton, and Farabee all getting moved, granted in separate moves, a month and a half apart or a month apart. Not exactly the same impact in your mind as them all getting dealt on deadline day. But that's 3 legitimate roster players that were on this team that entered the season with high expectations or high-ish expectations, and they're all gone. And probably the better of the 2 players that you got for Frost and Farabee has also been dealt for a third-round pick. Like, I don't know how you can complain. And we all know I'm not exactly like a homer here, and I certainly don't like get talking points and, just give fake praise. This is exactly what I asked for the team to do. This is exactly what a rebuild is supposed to look like. Let's see. Sean C. says, total waste of a season when it comes to Kolosov. 3-year ELC, 1 year of actual use if they don't repeat the process next year. Maybe he gets dealt, or maybe he gets the backup job next year. He's certainly not going to be their long-term starter. I just don't see it. Sean C. says, Kolosov, according to Kevin Kerr, has never skated with scratches either. Kevin is not a Kolosov fan. Michael Harnadek over on X, thanks for checking in, says, all of this hinges on Danny being able to get the best picks in the draft. Remember, Hextall was on track to sort of rebuild this team, but his drafts were horrible and actually set us back. This is all true. It is all true. Here's where you maybe look at it and say, all right, the Flyers might be in better position. Luchenko looks good. They have very high hopes and high beliefs in what Luchenko is going to be. They were able to get a falling Matvei Mishkov. That might have been a little bit of luck, but it worked out. Remains to be seen what the rest of these picks are going to develop into. I'm not giving them carte blanche and saying that they're infallible and they can do no wrong. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt right now that some of the picks are looking good. And in fairness, it's hockey. We're not really going to know how good or how bad these picks are for a few years. Nick Bott says, Briere easily gets an A for getting a first and a prospect for Laughton, then flipping Kuzmenko. Very good deadline for him considering he didn't want to move on from Risto. Andrew Fawcett says, so Danny traded Frost and Farabee for Peltier and a third. Sort of. Which was a cap clearing move. Like, all things considered, he cleared cap and got a third-round pick back. I don't know. Is that a good return? Is that a bad return? We can look at it on aggregate. And I'm sure on Press Row Show tomorrow, we'll discuss it. We can have the conversation about it on aggregate. Bob Wright says, 2026 seems to be the year of spending money. Wonder if we see them try to get a 1C via trade this offseason or next. That's where all this draft capital, I think, is going to end up paying dividends. Are they at the point right now where they could go and make a legitimate pitch to a top free agent to sign with Philadelphia? Hard for me to imagine they could. But you offer a team some of this treasure trove of assets you have in the draft. It's possible that you could end up getting somebody. It is. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I certainly feel better about them entering this offseason than I did a year ago, or 2 years ago, or even 3 years ago. Let's see. Carl Bradley says they have 7 of the top 50 picks this spring. Even a terrible draft should net something. That's true. There is like the idea that if you have enough shots, if you have enough cracks at it, at least 1 or 2 of them should hit. You have 7 picks between the first 2 rounds. At least 1 or 2 of them had better become actual NHL players. They better. And they better be certainly better than bottom 6 guys. It was funny. I saw somebody today. I don't have the tweet pulled up. There was somebody this morning that complained about Laughton. And they were like, Scott Laughton was a first-round pick. And if all you're able to get back for him is, like a third rounder, a second rounder, whatever, it's a total failure. And it's like, well, okay. Just because Laughton was a first it wasn't Laughton. It was Frost and Farabee. It was the Frost and Farabee thing. It was, these guys are both first-round picks, and all they ended up with was Peltier and a third-round pick. And that's terrible value. You have to get first-round picks back for Frost and Farabee. It's like, just because somebody thought that Frost and Farabee were good enough to use first-round picks does not mean that you just get the benefit of, years down the line, convincing another team that they're somehow worth what you used on them. That doesn't work. Sunken costs don't factor into future expenditures. You don't, as a GM of a team, say, oh, yeah, we were ready to give you Kuzmenko and Peltier, but then we noticed that these guys were both first-round picks at one point, so we're going to throw in a couple of firsts just so that you can recoup some of what you lost as an organization. That's not how that works. It's insane. Philly Sports Experts says, I just don't understand the reason for keeping Risto. That really lowers the ceiling and lowers the floor to help potentially get a top 3 pick in a 3-player draft. I think that if they were going to do it, right, the place and time it would have been most impactful is early in the season. Do I think that trading Risto would have helped them to bottom out? I do. However, if you look at where the current tankathon spots are for the lottery, the Flyers aren't in a position right now where they could even get down to like where San Jose and Chicago are at 43 and 46 points respectively. Like, you're not making up a 16-point gap to get to where Chicago is with the second best odds of getting the first overall pick. Like, that ain't happening. Now, you could make the case that you lose a bunch of games here, that you can fall behind Pittsburgh, get to number 6. Could you continue to fall and get behind Seattle, which has 56 points in the same amount of games played? Could you maybe make up that gap? Sure. Could you fall another 2 points to where Buffalo is at number 4? Maybe. Could you fall back, the 9 points it would take to get you back to where Nashville is at number 3? I don't know. That's where it all starts to get kind of crazy. Trading Risto also wouldn't have guaranteed you that you were going to lose each of your next 19 games. So I don't know what people expected. Now, Flyers Purgatory makes a pretty good point here. This June and July is make or break offseason. You didn't tank. You said the rebuild won't take 5 years, so making the playoffs next year is mandatory. That's why I think that next year they are going to make some moves, and they are going to actively look to make it into the postseason. And I think that on the whole, a lot of Flyers fans are going to be okay with it. I think the Flyers fans are going to be excited with the possibility of watching a young team with some young pieces, some talented pieces, try to make a playoff run. That's what I would expect to see happen. Let's see. Oh, Gabe is right. Gabe over on X and Ryan Reese both point out it was Peltier and a second and a third for 6 points in 24 games combined. Yes. Let's see. Nick Bott disagrees, by the way, about the mandatory making the playoffs next year. I think they'll make it. I do. I don't know how many people are going to be pissed if they miss the playoffs, but I'd much rather just see them make it next year because I don't think they're going to be bad enough to end up at the top of the lottery. And so you're back picking in hockey purgatory, but you are doing it on the backs of having a lot of young guys in the lineup and all kind of growing together. I don't know what that'll mean. All right. I think that's about where I want to end. This show actually went a little bit longer than I intended for it to. There was a show this morning where we thought about what could happen with the Flyers. And a lot of it ended up happening. Laughton got traded. Kuzmenko got traded. The defenseman went nowhere. I don't see any other trades coming through. I have not seen any last-second trades getting thrown onto Twitter from any of the big insiders. So, the biggest thing that happened here from the time the show went live is that Brad Marchand ended up in Florida. So that's pretty insane. Now, I will be back on Saturday and Sunday over on the Snow the Goalie channel. We'll have the Press Row show both days, and then next Tuesday and next Thursday. Oh my God, that's a lot of shows. But if you're new to this channel, if you haven't been here before, we tend to talk about Philadelphia sports and a lot of other shenanigans, and sometimes there are good to bad impressions, and sometimes we talk about non-Philly sports, talk about national sports, some other stuff. So if you haven't done so already, consider clicking that subscribe button. If you like podcasts better, the show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Show happens every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8:30 a.m., or somewhat close to that. So for now, that is the end of today's show, the second show of the day. I want to thank everybody who joined me live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. I want to thank all of you who watch or listen to the show after the fact on YouTube or any of those platforms or any of the podcast apps. Again, seriously, like the video, share the video, subscribe. We're on the drive to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to get there, damn it. But anyway, I want to thank all of you one more time. Have a great rest of your day. The Flyers make a few trades. We can all rest easy. They didn't stand pat, and I forget the person's name from this morning. Danny Briere did not prove to be a poor man's Ed Wade. That is something we can all be excited about. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I will talk to each and every one of you this weekend over on Snow the Goalie and on Monday here on the Russ Joy Show. I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Have a great weekend, everybody.